The hammer rang against the anvil in a rhythm that had long since become prayer, and Zachary Nolan barely noticed the heat of the forge anymore, or the ache in his shoulders, or the way the townspeople of Crossridge watched him with a mixture of respect and pity that never quite disappeared no matter how fine his metalwork became. He set down the horseshoe he had been shaping and wiped his brow with the back of his forearm, leaving a smear of soot across his temple. The afternoon sun slanted through the open doors of his smithy, illuminating motes of ash that danced in the air like fireflies. In 3 days, a woman would arrive, a bride. He had paid the Westmark marriage brokerage, a sum that had taken him 2 years to save, studying the portraits they had sent until he had settled on a woman with kind eyes and steady hands. An Orc woman named Mara who worked as a seamstress and wrote in her letter that she wanted a quiet life away from the crowded Orc settlements near the borderlands. He had never expected to marry. His brother Garrett had been the golden son, the one their father had poured all his training and affection into, the one who had inherited the family forge in the valley. Zachary had been the spare, the one who learned the trade standing in corners and watching, the one their mother patted absently on the head while saving her warmest smiles for his brother. When Alina Marsh had been of marrying age, she had chosen Garrett without a moment's hesitation, and Zachary had left for the frontier with nothing but his tools and a hollowness in his chest that hard work had never quite filled. But Crossridge needed a blacksmith, and Zachary was good at his trade, better than good. The farmers brought him their plowshares and the merchants their wagon wheels and the militia their weapons, and he had built a life from iron and fire and the satisfaction of work well done. It had taken him years to convince himself that he deserved more than solitude, that he could be someone's first choice, even if he had to pay a brokerage to arrange it. The sound of wheels on the rutted road made him straighten. The stage was not due for 3 more days. He stepped out of the smithy, shading his eyes against the afternoon glare, and watched as a hired wagon rolled to a stop in front of his forge. The driver, a grizzled man named Horace who ran goods between Crossridge and the larger towns, climbed down and opened the back gate. "Got a delivery for you, Nolan," Horace called. "Special one." Zachary's heart lurched. She was early. He had not finished preparing the small room above the smithy, had not yet purchased the linens he had promised himself he would buy, had not rehearsed the words of welcome that had been tangling on his tongue for weeks. A figure emerged from the wagon's shadowed interior, and Zachary's breath caught. She was small. That was his first thought. The portrait had not conveyed scale, and he had imagined someone taller, broader. But the woman who stood uncertainly on the wagon's gate, one hand gripping the wooden frame for balance, barely reached his shoulder. Her skin was the deep green of summer leaves, and her dark hair had been braided tightly against her skull in intricate patterns that must have taken hours. She wore a simple brown traveling dress that hung loose on her frame, and her eyes, wide and golden, fixed on him with an expression of such naked fear that he took an involuntary step forward. "Easy now," Horace said, offering his hand to help her down. She ignored it, jumping to the ground with a light thud. Her boots were worn nearly through at the toes. "Thank you for the ride," she said to Horace, her voice soft and precise. Then she turned to Zachary, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. "You are Zachary Nolan." "I am." He tried to gentle his voice, the way he did when calming a spooked horse. "You must be tired from the journey. I have water inside and bread, and you bought the wrong bride," she blurted. The words hung in the air between them. Horace paused in the act of unloading a small trunk from the wagon, his eyebrows climbing toward his hairline. Zachary stared at her, trying to make sense of what she had said. "I do not understand," he said slowly. Her hands twisted together in front of her. knuckles pale against green skin. At the brokerage, there was a mistake. Two of us were meant to travel on the same day to different men, and they mixed up the papers. You chose a woman named Mara. I am not Mara. I am Juna Morren, and I was meant for a farmer in Stonehill, and she was meant for you, and I did not realize until we were already on the road, and I saw the direction we were traveling, and the driver told me the name of the town, and I knew it was wrong. She spoke quickly, the words tumbling over each other, and he saw her tusks, small and white, pressing against her lower lip as she spoke. Her eyes never left his face, searching for something, reaction or rage or dismissal. They swapped you, Zachary said. Not a question. A statement, letting the reality of it settle in his mind. Yes, her voice cracked on the word. I am sorry. I should have said something immediately when I arrived, but I thought perhaps the driver had made an error. And then when we got closer, I knew he had not, and I should have turned back. But I did not have the coin for the return journey, and I thought perhaps I could explain, and you could contact the brokerage, and they could send Mara, and I could go to Stonehill where I was meant to be and breathe, Zachary said. She stopped, her mouth still half open on whatever she had been about to say next. He watched her chest rise and fall as she dragged in air, and he thought about the 2 years of saving, and the careful selection process, and the letters he had exchanged with a woman named Mara who was not standing in front of him. He thought about the fact that this girl, this terrified girl, could have stayed silent. The brokerage was 3 days' ride away. She could have let him believe she was Mara, could have hidden the truth until it was too late to matter, and he would never have known the difference until perhaps a letter arrived months later, if at all. But she had told him, immediately, at great cost to herself. That trunk yours? He asked, nodding toward the small wooden chest Horace had set on the ground. Yes, Juna said, her voice wary. Horace helped me get it inside. Zachary bent and grabbed one handle of the trunk. It was surprisingly light. Now wait just a minute, Horace said. Did I hear right? There's been some kind of mix-up. Seems so, Zachary said evenly. Not her fault. We will sort it out. Shouldn't she go back? The brokerage will need to know. I will contact them, Zachary said. Thank you for bringing her safely. What do I owe you for the journey? Horace quoted a price, still looking uncertain. Zachary paid him from the coin he kept in his belt pouch, adding an extra silver piece that made the driver's expression shift from concern to satisfaction. Once Horace had climbed back onto his wagon and started the horses moving, Zachary turned to Juna. She had not moved. She stood exactly where she had been, her arms wrapped around herself, watching him with those enormous golden eyes. Come inside, he said. You should send me back. Her voice was barely a whisper. You paid for Mara. You should demand that they deliver her and take me to Stonehill. That is what the contract says. I read the papers when the driver was not looking. Is Stonehill where you want to go? Zachary asked. The question seemed to startle her. I was purchased by a farmer. I do not know him. I have never seen his portrait or received a letter. The brokerage said he needed a worker more than a wife, someone strong to help with the harvest. I thought it would be better then. She trailed off, and he saw her jaw tighten. It does not matter what I want. It matters what the contract says. The contract, Zachary said, can wait until tomorrow. Today you are tired and hungry, and it is nearly evening, and I am not sending you anywhere until you have had a chance to rest. Come inside. He did not wait for her to argue. He picked up the trunk with both hands and carried it through the smithy to the narrow stairs that led to the room above. It was a small space, barely large enough for a bed and a chest and a washstand. But he had cleaned it thoroughly and fitted the window with new shutters and laid a rag rug on the floor that he had purchased from a weaver in town. He set the trunk at the foot of the bed and turned to find Juna standing in the doorway, looking around with an expression he could not quite read. "This is for me?" she asked. "It was meant to be," Zachary said. "The bed is new." "Well, the frame is old, but I reinforced the joints and the mattress is new, stuffed with straw and lavender. The basin there has fresh water. I sleep downstairs in the back of the smithy so you will have privacy. There is a bolt on the inside of the door." He watched her take in the bolt, saw something in her shoulders relax slightly. "Tomorrow we will contact the brokerage and sort this out," he continued. "But tonight you are safe here. Do you understand? Why are you being kind to me?" The question came out raw, confused. "I am not the woman you chose. You could demand a refund. You could be angry." Zachary leaned against the doorframe and considered his answer. The truth sat in his chest like a coal from the forge, hot and bright. "You told me," he said simply. "You could have lied. You could have pretended to be Mara, and I would have been none the wiser. But you told me the truth the moment you arrived, even though it cost you. That means something." Her eyes searched his face, and he let her look, let her see whatever she needed to see. Finally, she nodded, a small, jerky motion. "I will bring you some supper," he said. "There is a tavern in town, and the keeper's wife makes a good stew. Do you like stew?" "I like anything," Juna said. "I am not particular. Still, I will ask for stew." He smiled at her, hoping it looked reassuring rather than awkward. "Bolt the door behind me. I will knock 3 times when I return." He left her there and descended the stairs, his heart hammering in his chest for reasons he did not entirely understand. In the smithy, he banked the forge and washed his hands and face in the barrel of water he kept by the door, scrubbing away the soot until his skin was merely tanned instead of black. Then he walked the short distance to the Copper Kettle, the only tavern in Crossridge, and tried to ignore the curious looks that followed him. Martha, the tavern keeper's wife, ladled stew into a covered pot without asking questions, though her eyes were bright with curiosity. "Will you be wanting 2 portions, then?" she asked innocently. "Yes," Zachary said, because there was no point in hiding it. By tomorrow the entire town would know that a bride had arrived at his forge, and some bread. "The dark bread with seeds, if you have it." "I have it." Martha wrapped the bread in cloth and handed it over along with the pot. "There's butter in there too, and a bit of honey, for sweetness." "Thank you." He paid her and carried the food back through the gathering dusk, the pot warm against his chest. Juna must have been listening for him, because the door unbolted almost as soon as he finished knocking. She had unpinned her hair, and it fell in thick waves around her face, softening the sharp angles of her features. She had also washed, he noticed. The traveling dust was gone from her skin, and she smelled faintly of the lavender soap he had left by the basin. "I brought enough for both of us," he said. "If you would like company, or I can leave it and go if you would rather eat alone." She hesitated, and he saw the war playing out behind her eyes. Fear and exhaustion and something else, something that might have been loneliness. "Company would be nice," she said quietly. There was no table in the small room, so they sat on the floor with the pot of stew between them, using the bread to sop up the rich broth. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Zachary was acutely aware of her presence, the soft sounds of her eating, the way she ducked her head as if trying to make herself smaller. "How long were you with the brokerage?" he asked finally, when the silence began to feel too heavy. 3 months, Juna said. She tore off another piece of bread, her movements precise and careful. "I came from a settlement near the border. My mother died last winter, and I had no other family. The elders said I could stay, but I would need to contribute more, work harder, and I was already working as hard as I could." The brokerage representative came through in spring. He said there were men in the frontier towns who wanted orc wives, men who did not mind that we were different. He said it would be a better life. Did you believe him?" She looked up at him, and there was a wry twist to her mouth that was almost a smile. "I believed it would be a different life. Whether better or worse, I would not know until I tried. But staying in the settlement meant slow starvation or accepting a marriage to a man 3 times my age who already had 2 wives and wanted a third to do the washing. So I signed the papers and went to the brokerage house. 3 months is a long time to wait," Zachary said. "They wanted to make sure we were." She paused, choosing her words. "Suitable, clean, obedient. They taught us how to keep house in the human fashion, how to cook human food, how to speak without an accent. There were 12 of us when I arrived. By the time I left, there were only 4. The others were matched and sent away. Were you lonely there?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She set down her bread and looked at him directly. "Why do you ask questions like that? Like what? Like you care about the answer." Zachary felt something twist in his chest. "I do care about the answer." "Why?" She sounded genuinely baffled. "You do not know me. I am not even the woman you chose. Tomorrow you will send me back, and I will go to Stonehill or return to the brokerage, and you will forget I was ever here." "I do not think I will forget," Zachary said. The words came out more intense than he had intended, and he saw her eyes widen. He cleared his throat and tried again, gentler. "You asked me earlier why I was being kind to you. I think it is because I know what it feels like to be the wrong choice, to be the one who was not wanted." Her expression shifted, something that might have been recognition flickering across her features. "You were not chosen," she said. "Not a question." "My brother was the one everyone wanted," Zachary said. "He was older, stronger, more charming. My father taught him the secrets of the trade and left me to sweep the floor. When a woman came of age to marry, she chose him. I was just the spare, the one who did not quite measure up. So I came here to Crossridge and I built a life for myself. A good life. But I never forgot what it felt like to be the second choice. The mistake." Juna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very softly, "I am sorry that happened to you." "I am sorry you were lonely at the brokerage," Zachary said. They looked at each other across the pot of cooling stew, and something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. Then Juna picked up her bread again and took a small bite, and the moment eased into something more comfortable. "Tell me about Mara," she said. "The woman you chose. What was she like in her portrait?" "She had kind eyes," Zachary said. "And she wrote to me that she liked to sew, that she made quilts and clothing and had steady hands. I thought that would be good. Someone who made things like I do. Someone who understood the value of work." "She sounds nice," Juna said. "She does." Zachary hesitated. "What about you? What do you like? What are you good at?" Juna looked surprised again, as if no one had asked her such a thing before. "I am good with numbers," she said slowly. "At the settlement, I kept the accounts for the communal stores. I can calculate quickly in my head, and I like the order of it, everything balancing out the way it should. And I can read and write, though not as well as I would like. My mother taught me when I was young." "Those are useful skills," Zachary said. "They are not the skills men want in a bride," Juna said. There was no bitterness in her voice, only resignation. "They want cooking and cleaning and strong backs for labor. The brokerage told me I was lucky the farmer in Stonehill wanted a worker. Otherwise, I might not have been chosen at all." "Then the farmer in Stonehill is a fool," Zachary said. "And so is any man who cannot see that a mind is worth as much as a strong back." She stared at him, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed. "You keep saying things like that," she whispered. "Things that make me think you might actually mean them. I do mean them." "Why?" It was the same question she had asked before, but this time it sounded different. This time it sounded like she genuinely wanted to understand, like she was reaching for something she could not quite name. Zachary set down his own piece of bread and met her eyes. Because I spent too many years believing that my worth was measured by other people's choices. By whether I was the one my father favored, or the one a woman wanted, or the one who inherited the forge. And I was miserable. It was only when I came here and started building something for myself that I realized my worth was not about being chosen. It was about choosing myself. Choosing to be better, to work harder, to make something good. And I think you deserve to know that too. That your worth is not about whether you can cook or clean or whether some farmer thinks you are strong enough for his fields. Your worth is in who you are. And from what I have seen today, you are honest and brave and clever, and those are fine things to be. Juna's eyes had filled with tears. She blinked rapidly, swiping at them with the back of her hand. "You are a strange man," she said, and then she laughed, a watery sound. "No, that is not right. You are a good man. I did not think I would meet one of those." "There are a few of us around," Zachary said, trying to lighten the mood. "We hide in blacksmith shops and come out at night." She laughed again, more steadily this time. "Thank you," she said, "for the food, for the kindness. For not sending me away immediately. I told you, tomorrow is soon enough for that." He stood and collected the empty pot. "Try to sleep. I know it is strange here and you do not know me, but I promise you are safe. No one will bother you." "I believe you," Juna said, and the simple trust in her voice made his chest ache. He left her there and went down to the smithy, where he lay on his own narrow cot and stared at the ceiling and thought about golden eyes and small tusks, and the way she had looked at him when he said she was brave. He thought about Mara, the woman he had chosen, and tried to feel disappointed or angry about the brokerage's mistake. But all he could feel was a strange, fluttering hope that he did not yet have the courage to examine too closely. Sleep was a long time coming. The next morning, Zachary woke before dawn out of habit and made his way to the town's well to fetch water. By the time he returned, the sun was just beginning to crest the eastern hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. He built up the forge fire and set a kettle to boil for tea, and he was measuring out oats for porridge when he heard the soft sound of footsteps on the stairs. Juna appeared in the doorway, her hair once again braided tightly against her skull, her dress smoothed and tidy. She looked like she had not slept much either. There were shadows under her eyes, and she held herself with the same tense wariness he had seen the day before. "Good morning," Zachary said. "I hope the bed was comfortable." "It was fine," she said. "Better than fine. I have not slept in a real bed in months." "What did you sleep on at the brokerage?" "Pallets on the floor. 6 of us to a room." She moved into the smithy, looking around at the tools hanging on the walls, the half-finished projects waiting on the workbench. "You must be very skilled to have all of this." "I work hard," Zachary said. "That is most of it. Would you like some porridge? I am not much of a cook, but I can manage the basics." "I can cook," Juna said. "If you would like, I am not a master, but the brokerage taught me enough to get by." "You are a guest," Zachary said. "You do not need to earn your keep." "I am not a guest," Juna corrected gently. "I am a mistake, and I would rather be useful than sit idle while you decide what to do with me." There was logic in that, and Zachary could see the pride in her bearing, the need to contribute. He stepped back from the pot of oats and gestured for her to take over. She moved into the space with quiet efficiency, adjusting the heat of the coals and stirring the porridge with a smooth, practiced rhythm. He watched her work, noting the way her shoulders gradually relaxed as she focused on the task. "There is honey in that jar," he said, pointing, "and dried fruit in the sack beside it." She added both to the porridge, along with a pinch of salt from the box on the shelf. When it was done, she ladled it into 2 bowls and handed him one. They ate standing up, leaning against the workbench, and Zachary had to admit that her porridge was better than anything he had made for himself in months. "This is good," he said. "It is only porridge, still good." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth, there and gone again. They finished eating in silence, and then Zachary washed the bowls in the barrel while Juna stood by the forge, warming her hands against the heat. "I need to send a letter to the brokerage," Zachary said, "to inform them of the mistake and ask what they want to do. The post rider comes through Crossridge every 3 days. He will be here tomorrow, so if I write the letter today, it will reach Westmark within the week." "And then they will tell you to send me back," Juna said. Her voice was carefully neutral, but he saw the tightness around her eyes. "Probably," Zachary said, "unless you want to stay." She turned to look at him, her expression startled. "Stay here in Crossridge with me." The words were out before he could think better of them, reckless and impulsive. "I know we just met. I know this is not what you expected. But if you want to stay, I will tell the brokerage to send Mara to Stonehill and let you stay here, as my wife, if that is something you would want." Juna stared at him. "You cannot mean that." "Why not?" "Because you do not know me, because you chose Mara, because—" she gestured helplessly. "Because you paid for someone else and I am the wrong bride and you should not have to settle for a mistake." "You are not a mistake," Zachary said. He set down the bowl he had been washing and turned to face her fully. "A mistake was made, yes, but you are not it. You are a person. A good person, from everything I have seen. And I would rather have an honest woman who tells me the truth even when it costs her than a kind-eyed seamstress I have never met." "You have known me for 1 day," Juna said. Her voice shook. "1 day, and you are ready to bind yourself to me for life. That is not rational. That is not sensible." "Maybe not," Zachary agreed. "But I have been sensible my entire life, and it has gotten me a lonely forge and an empty bed. Maybe it is time to be a little less sensible. Maybe it is time to take a chance on something that feels right, even if it does not make perfect sense on paper." "You do not love me," Juna said. "You cannot. Love does not happen in a day." "No," Zachary said. "I do not love you, not yet, but I think I could. And I think if you stayed, we could build something good together. Something real. Is that not worth trying?" She turned away from him, her arms wrapped around herself again, and he saw her shoulders shake. He waited, giving her space to think, to feel, to decide. The forge crackled softly behind them, and somewhere outside a rooster crowed, announcing the full arrival of morning. "I do not know how to do this," Juna said finally, her voice muffled. "I do not know how to trust that this is real, that you mean what you say. That you will not wake up tomorrow and realize you made a terrible mistake and want to send me away." "Then stay for a week," Zachary said. "Give it a week. Get to know me, let me get to know you, and if at the end of it you want to leave, I will pay for your passage to anywhere you want to go. Stonehill, the brokerage, back to your settlement, anywhere. No obligations, no contract. Just a week to see if this could work." She turned back to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Why would you do that? Why would you take that risk?" "Because you took a risk telling me the truth yesterday," Zachary said. "And because I think you deserve a chance to choose for yourself what happens next. Not the brokerage, not some farmer in Stonehill, not me. You. What do you want, Juna?" It was the question he had asked her the night before, and she had not had an answer then. He watched her wrestle with it now, saw the fear and hope and desperate longing chase each other across her face. "I want to stay," she whispered. "I want to believe this could be real, but I am so afraid." "I know," Zachary said. "I am afraid too, but maybe we can be afraid together and that will make it easier." She laughed, a broken sound that was half sob. "You are terrible at being sensible." "I know," he said again, and this time he smiled. "So will you stay for a week?" Juna looked at him for a long moment, and then she nodded. "A week," she said. I will stay for a week." "Good," Zachary said, and the relief that flooded through him was almost dizzying. "Then I will not send the letter yet. We have time." The town of Crossridge was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, and the arrival of a bride at the blacksmith's forge was news enough to draw attention. By mid-morning, 3 separate people had found reasons to stop by the smithy, their eyes bright with curiosity as they peered past Zachary to where Juna sat at the workbench, mending a tear in her traveling dress. "Heard you had company," said Thomas Garrett, a farmer who lived on the outskirts of town. He was a good man, fair and hard-working, and he did not flinch when Juna looked up and met his gaze. "This the bride you were expecting?" "This is Juna," Zachary said evenly. "She arrived yesterday." "Pleased to meet you, miss," Thomas said, nodding to Juna. "Welcome to Crossridge. It is a good town, quiet but friendly. I hope you will be happy here." "Thank you," Juna said, her voice soft. Thomas lingered for a moment longer, then seemed to remember he had a purpose for his visit. "Came to ask if you had finished with my scythe. The wheat is ready for cutting, and I will need it soon." "It is done," Zachary said, relieved to have something concrete to focus on. He retrieved the scythe from where it hung on the wall and presented it for inspection. "I rehammered the blade and sharpened it. It should cut clean now." Thomas tested the edge with his thumb and nodded approvingly. "Fine work, as always. What do I owe you?" They settled the payment, and Thomas left with the scythe over his shoulder and a final friendly nod to Juna. He was barely out the door before Martha from the tavern appeared, carrying a basket covered with a cloth. "Thought you two might like some fresh bread," she said, her eyes darting between Zachary and Juna with barely concealed interest. "And I made extra jam yesterday. Strawberry. It is good on toast." "That is very kind of you," Zachary said, accepting the basket. "Thank you, Martha." "It is no trouble at all." Martha smiled warmly at Juna. "You must be the bride Zachary has been expecting. I am Martha. My husband and I run the Copper Kettle, the tavern just down the road. If you need anything at all, you just come and ask. We look after our own here in Crossridge." "I appreciate that," Juna said. She had set down her sewing and was watching Martha with cautious eyes, as if waiting for the other woman to say something cruel or dismissive. But Martha only beamed at her, seemingly unfazed by the green skin and tusks. "You settling in all right?" Martha asked. "I know it can be a shock coming to a new place where you do not know anyone, but Zachary is a good man, one of the best. You will be in good hands." "I am learning that," Juna said quietly. Martha stayed for a few more minutes, chatting about the weather and the upcoming harvest festival, and then bustled off with a reminder that they were always welcome at the tavern for supper. Zachary set the basket on the workbench and uncovered it to reveal a loaf of bread still warm from the oven and 3 jars of jam. "She is kind," Juna said, sounding surprised. "Most people here are," Zachary said. "Crossridge is a frontier town. We cannot afford to be too particular about who we accept. If you work hard and do not cause trouble, you are welcome. That includes orcs." "I have not found that to be true in most places," Juna said. "I know." Zachary broke off a piece of the bread and handed it to her. "But it is true here. I would not have brought you to a place where you would be treated poorly. I promise you that." She took the bread and bit into it, her expression thoughtful. "You keep making promises to me," she said. "Do you always do that with people you just met?" "No," Zachary admitted. "But then, I have never met anyone like you before." She flushed, a darker green spreading across her cheeks, and looked down at her bread. "You should not say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it makes me hope," she said. "And hope is dangerous." "Maybe," Zachary said. "But so is living without it." The third visitor of the morning was less welcome. Peter Dalton was a merchant who had settled in Crossridge 2 years prior, and while he was successful and well-connected, There was something about the man that set Zachary's teeth on edge. He was too smooth, too quick with flattery, and his eyes were always calculating, always looking for an advantage. "Nolan," Dalton said, strolling into the smithy as if he owned it. "I heard the most interesting rumor. They say you have taken an orc bride. Is it true?" "It is true," Zachary said. He did not miss the way Dalton's gaze slid over Juna, assessing and dismissive all at once. "How modern of you," Dalton said, his tone dripping with false admiration. "I must say I am surprised. I would not have thought you the type to go for such an exotic choice." Juna had gone very still, her hands clenched in her lap. Zachary felt a surge of anger, hot and protective. "Juna is not exotic," he said flatly. "She is my guest, and you will speak of her with respect or not at all." Dalton raised his hands in mock surrender. "No offense intended, of course. I am merely curious. There are not many orc women in these parts, and I have heard that the brokerage in Westmark has been doing good business matching them with frontier men. How much did she cost you, if you do not mind my asking?" "I do mind," Zachary said. "Was there something you needed, Dalton? Or did you just come here to pry into my personal affairs?" "Touchy, touchy." Dalton's smile did not reach his eyes. "I was merely being neighborly, but since you ask, I did have a reason for stopping by. I need a lock repaired, a complicated one. German make. Very fine. I will pay double your usual rate if you can have it done by the end of the week." Zachary wanted to refuse, wanted to send Dalton away and his calculating eyes with him. But work was work, and he could not afford to turn down paying customers just because he disliked them. "Bring it by this afternoon," he said curtly. "I will take a look." "Excellent." Dalton tipped his hat. "Pleasure doing business with you, Nolan, and welcome to Crossridge, Miss Juna," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Juna." Dalton's smile widened. "Charming." "Absolutely charming." He left, and the smithy felt cleaner in his absence. Zachary turned to Juna and found her staring at the door, her expression unreadable. "I am sorry about that," he said. "Dalton is an ass, but he pays well. I should not have let him speak to you that way." "It was not as bad as it could have been," Juna said. She picked up her sewing again, her movements stiff. "He did not call me a monster or spit at me or tell me to go back where I came from, so by comparison, it was almost polite." "That is a low bar," Zachary said. "It is the bar I have learned to live with." She pulled the thread through the fabric with short, sharp tugs. "You defended me. That is more than most would do." "You are under my protection," Zachary said. "Anyone who wants to insult you will have to go through me first." She looked up at him then, and he saw something soften in her eyes. "You mean that?" "I do." "You hardly know me." "I know enough," Zachary said. "And I am learning more every moment. That is what this week is for, is it not? To learn about each other, I suppose it is." She set down her sewing and stood. "Then let me learn about your work. Will you teach me what you do? I have never seen a blacksmith at his forge." "You want to watch me work?" Zachary asked, surprised. "I want to understand what your life is like," Juna said. "If I am going to consider staying, I need to know what I would be staying for. So yes, teach me." Zachary felt a warmth spread through his chest, different from the heat of the forge, but just as real. "All right," he said. "Let me show you." He spent the rest of the morning teaching her the basics of his trade, explaining the difference between iron and steel, showing her how to judge the temperature of the metal by its color, demonstrating the way the hammer needed to strike at just the right angle to shape the red-hot metal without shattering it. Juna listened with fierce concentration, asking questions that were smart and insightful, and when he let her try a few careful strikes under his supervision, she approached the task with the same precise focus she had brought to cooking the porridge. "You have a good sense of rhythm," he told her after she had successfully flattened a small piece of scrap iron into a rough disc. "That is important. The hammer and the anvil need to work together like a dance. I would not know about dancing, Juna said, wiping sweat from her forehead. But I understand rhythm. Numbers have rhythm too, patterns that repeat and balance. I never thought of it that way, Zachary said, but you are right. There is a kind of mathematics to smithing, angles and force and timing. It all has to add up correctly or the metal will not behave. They worked together until midday, when the heat became too intense, and Zachary called a halt. They ate the bread and jam Martha had brought, washing it down with cool water from the well, and then Juna surprised him by suggesting they take a walk through the town. I would like to see where I might be living, she said. If I stay, I should know what Crossridge is like. So they walked together through the dusty streets, and Zachary showed her the places that made up his world. The mill where the farmers brought their grain, the general store where he bought his supplies, the small chapel where the traveling priest held services once a month. The town was quiet in the afternoon heat, but the few people they passed greeted them with nods and curious smiles. No one was outright hostile, though Zachary saw a few speculative looks directed at Juna, and he made a point of staying close to her, his presence a silent declaration of protection. They ended up at the edge of town, where the road gave way to open fields and the land stretched out in rolling waves of green and gold. Juna stopped there, looking out at the horizon, and Zachary watched the wind tug at her braids. "It is beautiful here," she said softly. "So much space. So much sky. In the settlement, we lived in the shadow of the mountains and everything felt closed in, but here it feels like the world is wide open." "I felt the same way when I first came," Zachary said. "After growing up in the valley with my brother's shadow over everything, it was a relief to have room to breathe, to be my own person." "Do you ever regret leaving?" Juna asked. "Sometimes," Zachary admitted. "I miss my mother, but I do not miss the feeling of being unwanted, of being second best." Juna turned to look at him, her golden eyes serious. "You said yesterday that you know what it feels like to be the wrong choice. Is that what you meant? That your family made you feel that way?" "My father did," Zachary said. "My mother loved me, I think, in her way, but she loved my brother more. Everyone did. He was everything I was not, confident, talented, charming, and I was just there, in the background." "That must have been lonely," Juna said. "It was." The admission came easier than he had expected. "For a long time I thought there was something wrong with me. That if I could just work harder, be better, then maybe I would be enough. But it was never about me. It was about them and what they wanted, and I was never going to be the person they wanted me to be, so I left." "And became the person you wanted to be instead," Juna said. "I tried," Zachary said. "I am still trying." She reached out then, a tentative gesture, and placed her hand on his arm. Her palm was warm through the sleeve of his shirt, and he felt the calluses on her fingers, the evidence of hard work and harder times. "I think you are doing well," she said. "From what I can see, you have built a good life here, a respected trade, a home, friends. That is more than many people achieve." "But it is not complete," Zachary said. "There is a part of me that is still lonely, still waiting for someone to choose me first. Not because they have to, or because it is convenient, but because they want to. Because I am the one they want above all others." "Is that why you went to the brokerage?" Juna asked. "To find someone who would choose you?" "Partially," Zachary said. "And partially because I was tired of being alone. I wanted someone to share this life with, someone to talk to at the end of the day, someone to build a future with. I thought Mara might be that person." "And now you think I might be?" Juna's voice was very small. Zachary turned to face her fully, and he saw the vulnerability in her expression, the fear and the fragile hope. "I think you could be," he said honestly, "if you want to be. But that is your choice, Juna. I will not force it. I will not expect it. All I am asking is that you give us a chance to find out." She held his gaze for a long moment, and then she nodded. "A week," she said. "We agreed on a week, so let us see what happens in a week." They walked back to the smithy as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, and Zachary felt something shift between them, a tentative bridge being built across the space that separated them. It was not love, not yet, but it was something. It was possibility. That evening, Dalton returned with the lock he wanted repaired, a complicated German mechanism that had jammed and refused to open. Zachary examined it while Dalton hovered nearby, offering unsolicited commentary on the quality of the craftsmanship and the value of the piece. Juna had retreated to the room upstairs when Dalton arrived, and Zachary was grateful for that. He did not trust the merchant, and he did not like the way Dalton's eyes had lingered on her. "This will take me at least 3 days," Zachary said, setting the lock aside. "Maybe 4. The mechanism is delicate and I will need to fabricate a new tumbler. I cannot rush it without risking damage." "That is fine," Dalton said. "Take your time. I am in no hurry." He leaned against the workbench, his posture casual. "So tell me, Nolan, how are you finding married life so far?" "I am not married yet," Zachary said. "No. I thought the brokerage arrangements were binding. Once the bride is delivered, the contract is complete." "The situation is complicated," Zachary said shortly. He did not owe Dalton an explanation, and he had no intention of giving one. "Complicated how?" Dalton's eyes glittered with curiosity. "Did she not meet your expectations? Is she defective in some way?" "She is not defective," Zachary snapped. "And my arrangement with the brokerage is my business, not yours." Dalton held up his hands in that same mocking gesture of surrender. "No need to be defensive. I am merely curious. You paid good money for a bride, and I would hate to see you swindled. These brokerages can be unscrupulous. If there has been a problem, you should contact them immediately and demand satisfaction." "I will handle it," Zachary said. Of course. Dalton pushed off from the workbench. "I will leave you to your work, but if you need advice, feel free to ask. I have some experience with contracts and negotiations. I would be happy to help." "I will keep that in mind," Zachary said, though he had no intention of doing so. After Dalton left, Zachary locked the smithy door and climbed the stairs to the room above. Juna was sitting by the window, looking out at the darkening sky, and she turned when she heard him enter. "Has he gone?" she asked. "Yes." Zachary sat down on the floor beside the bed, suddenly exhausted. "I am sorry you had to hide. He makes me uneasy." "He makes me uneasy too," Juna said. "He looks at me like I am a piece of merchandise, something to be appraised and valued." "He looks at everyone that way," Zachary said. "It is how he thinks. Everything is a transaction to him." "You think he will cause trouble?" Juna asked, "if he finds out about the mistake." "I do not know," Zachary said honestly, "but I will not let him hurt you, I promise you that." Juna was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "You keep making promises. You always keep them." "I try to," Zachary said. "I am not perfect, I make mistakes. But I do not make promises lightly, and when I give my word, I mean it." "I believe you," Juna said. She stood and moved to sit beside him on the floor, her shoulder almost touching his. "I have been thinking about what you said earlier, about being the wrong choice. I understand that feeling more than you know." "Will you tell me about it?" Zachary asked. She was quiet for so long that he thought she might refuse, but then she began to speak, her voice low and steady. "My mother was a weaver. She was skilled and her work was sought after in the settlement. But she was also proud, and she refused to marry any of the men who courted her because she said none of them were good enough. She wanted to choose for herself, to wait for someone who would value her for more than her dowry or her skills. And then she met my father." Juna paused and Zachary waited, letting her find her words. He was human, she said. A trader who came through the settlement twice a year, buying orc textiles to sell in the human towns. My mother fell in love with him, and he claimed to love her too. They were together for 3 years, and then she became pregnant with me. She thought he would marry her, take her with him to live in the human lands. But when I was born and he saw that I was green-skinned, with tusks and pointed ears, he left. He said he could not raise a half-breed child, that it would ruin his reputation. He gave my mother some coin and disappeared, and she never saw him again. I am sorry, Zachary said, the words utterly inadequate. My mother raised me alone, Juna continued, and she loved me, I know she did. But there was always a sadness in her, a bitterness. She had chosen my father, and he had rejected her because of me, because I was not human enough. And the other orcs in the settlement looked down on her for having a half-breed child, and they looked down on me for being the evidence of her poor choice. I was too orc for the humans and too human for the orcs, and I belonged nowhere. You belong here, Zachary said, if you want to. Juna looked at him, her eyes searching his face. How can you say that? You have known me for 2 days. Because in 2 days, you have shown me more honesty and courage than most people show in a lifetime, Zachary said. And because I know what it feels like to not belong, and I would not wish that on anyone. Especially not you. She leaned against him then, a small movement, her head coming to rest on his shoulder. He froze, hardly daring to breathe, and then slowly, carefully, he put his arm around her. She felt small and solid against his side, and he could smell the lavender soap in her hair. Thank you, she whispered, for listening, for understanding. Always, Zachary said, and he meant it. They sat there together as the darkness deepened outside the window, and Zachary thought about the strange path that had led them both to this moment. A brokerage mistake, a wrong bride, a lonely blacksmith and a lost orc girl, both looking for something they could not quite name. It should not have worked. By all logic, it should have been a disaster, but it did not feel like a disaster. It felt like the beginning of something important. The week passed in a rhythm of work and conversation, of small moments that built into something larger. Zachary taught Juna more about the forge, and she proved to be a quick learner, her hands steady and her mind sharp. In return, she took over the cooking, producing meals that were simple but well made, and she began to organize the chaos of his smithy with a methodical efficiency that made him realize how much he had been fumbling through on his own. They talked. Long conversations that stretched late into the evening, sitting by the forge fire or walking through the fields at the edge of town. Zachary told her about his childhood, about the valley and his brother, and the day he had decided to leave. Juna told him about the settlement, about her mother's weaving and the loneliness of being different, about the brokerage and the months of waiting and the fear that no one would ever choose her. I thought I would end up with someone cruel, she admitted one night as they sat on the steps of the smithy, watching the stars emerge. Or at best, someone indifferent, someone who would use me for work and nothing more. I never imagined I would end up here with you talking like this. I never imagined it either, Zachary said, but I am glad you are here. So am I, Juna said, and the smile she gave him was genuine and warm. On the 4th day, the post rider arrived. Zachary had been expecting him, and he felt a twist of anxiety as he watched the man dismount and reach into his saddlebag. But the post rider only had a single letter, addressed to a farmer on the other side of town, and after collecting his fee and exchanging pleasantries, he rode on. You did not send the letter, Juna said. She had been watching from the doorway of the smithy, and her voice was carefully neutral. No, Zachary said, I did not. Why not? He turned to face her. Because I did not want to. Because every day you are here, I become more certain that sending you away would be the biggest mistake of my life. Because I am falling for you, Juna, and I am not ready to let you go." She stared at him, her eyes wide. "You are falling for me?" "Yes." There was no point in denying it, no point in hiding behind careful words. "I know it has only been a few days. I know it is too soon. But it is the truth." "I am falling for you too," Juna whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Me too," Zachary said, "but maybe that is all right. Maybe being terrified means we are taking a real risk, and real risks are worth taking." She crossed the space between them and took his hands in hers. Her palms were warm, her grip strong. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We keep going," Zachary said. "One day at a time. And when the week is up, if you still want to stay, we figure out how to make it official. How to make you my wife in truth, not just by accident. And if the brokerage comes looking for me, then we deal with it," Zachary said. "Together." Juna nodded, and then she did something that surprised him. She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, a brief, feather-light touch that sent a shock of warmth through his entire body. "Thank you," she said, "for choosing me, for letting me choose you." "Thank you for staying," Zachary replied, his voice rough. On the 6th day, trouble arrived in the form of a rider from the Westmark marriage brokerage. He was a thin, officious man with a ledger tucked under his arm and a permanent scowl etched into his features. He introduced himself as Marcus Whitley, senior contract administrator, and he demanded to see Zachary immediately. "There has been an error," Whitley announced without preamble. "A significant error involving a contracted bride delivery. I have come to rectify the situation." Zachary felt Juna tense beside him, but he kept his voice calm. "What kind of error?" "Two brides were dispatched from our facility on the same day, bound for different locations. Due to a clerical mistake, they were sent to the wrong destinations. You were meant to receive a woman named Mara Oslin. Instead, you received Juna Morren, who was contracted to a farmer in Stonehill. I am here to collect Miss Morren and arrange for the correct bride to be delivered." "And what if I do not want the correct bride?" Zachary asked. Whitley's scowl deepened. "The contract is binding, Mr. Nolan. You paid for a specific woman and you are entitled to receive her. Miss Morren was not the woman you selected, and therefore she must be returned." "I am not a piece of lost luggage," Juna said, her voice shaking with anger. "I am a person." "You are a contracted bride," Whitley said, not even looking at her. "And the contract specifies that you were to be delivered to Edmund Varley in Stonehill. The brokerage has a responsibility to fulfill its agreements. If you do not comply, there will be financial penalties and legal consequences." "What kind of penalties?" Zachary asked. Whitley consulted his ledger. "According to the terms of the contract, if a bride is not delivered as specified, the brokerage may impose a penalty of up to double the original contract price, to be paid by the party responsible for the error. In this case, since you have retained Miss Morren beyond the grace period for reporting errors, you would be liable for the penalty." "That is absurd," Zachary said. "I did not cause the error. Your brokerage did. You sent the wrong woman, and now you want to charge me for your mistake." "The contract also specifies a 7-day reporting period," Whitley said, his tone smug. "If a bride arrives and the client does not report any issues within 7 days, the contract is considered fulfilled. You have had Miss Morren for 6 days, Mr. Nolan. If you had reported the error immediately, there would be no penalty. But you did not. Therefore, you are in breach of contract." Zachary felt a surge of fury so intense it nearly choked him. This was exactly the kind of manipulation he had feared, the kind of trap that unscrupulous brokerages used to squeeze extra money out of desperate men. He had heard stories, but he had hoped that Westmark was different. "And what about Mara?" he asked. Where is she? Miss Oslin is currently in Stonehill with Mr. Varley. She also wishes to return to the brokerage and be reassigned to the correct client. Does she? Zachary looked at Juna. Or is that what you are telling me because it is convenient? Whitley's expression tightened. I assure you, Mr. Nolan, the brokerage acts in good faith. We are merely attempting to correct an error and ensure that all parties receive what they contracted for. I contracted for a bride, Zachary said, and I have one. Juna is staying here, with me. That is not acceptable, Whitley said. Miss Morren was contracted to Mr. Varley. He has paid for her and he is entitled to receive her. Then he can have a refund, Zachary said. I will pay him back whatever he spent. It is not that simple. The contract includes not just the purchase price, but also compensation for the time and effort invested in the arrangement. Mr. Varley is demanding full satisfaction, which means either the delivery of Miss Morren or a penalty payment of 3 times the contract price. 3 times. Zachary's voice rose. That is robbery. That is the contract, Whitley said coldly. If you refuse to comply, the brokerage will take legal action. We have contacts with the territorial magistrate, and I assure you the law will be on our side. Juna stepped forward, her face pale but her voice steady. I will go, she said. I will go to Stonehill. I will not let Zachary be ruined because of me. No, Zachary said immediately. You are not going anywhere. We cannot afford 3 times the contract price, Juna said. You told me yourself that you saved for 2 years to pay for Mara. Where would you get that kind of money? I will find it, Zachary said. I will borrow it, sell my tools if I have to, but I am not letting them take you. This is not your choice to make, Juna said, and there were tears in her eyes. I will not let you destroy yourself for me. It is not worth it. You are worth it, Zachary said fiercely. You are worth everything. Whitley cleared his throat. If you have finished with this display, I need an answer. Will you surrender Miss Morren and accept delivery of Miss Oslin, or will you pay the penalty? Zachary looked at Juna, at the fear and determination in her eyes, and he felt something crystallize in his mind. A plan. A dangerous, reckless plan, but a plan nonetheless. I need time to think, he said. Give me until tomorrow. I can give you until noon tomorrow, Whitley said. After that, I will assume you are refusing to cooperate, and I will take Miss Morren by force if necessary. You will not touch her, Zachary said, his voice low and dangerous. Then you had better make the right decision, Whitley said. He turned and walked out of the smithy, leaving Zachary and Juna standing in the wreckage of their fragile hopes. As soon as Whitley was gone, Juna turned to Zachary. You cannot fight this, she said. The brokerage has the law on their side. If you resist, they will ruin you. Let them try, Zachary said. I am not giving you up without a fight. Why? Juna demanded, her voice breaking. Why are you doing this? You have known me for less than a week. I am not worth risking everything for. You are to me, Zachary said. He took her hands, holding them tightly. Listen to me, Juna. I have spent my entire life being the second choice, the one who was not good enough. And then you arrived, and you were honest and brave and real, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Like I had found something that mattered. I am not letting that go. I am not letting you go, not without a fight. What are you going to do? Juna asked. I am going to talk to the town council, Zachary said. Crossridge is a frontier town, and we have our own laws, our own ways of doing things. The brokerage might have power in Westmark, but they do not have power here. If I can convince the council that what the brokerage is doing is wrong, they might be able to protect you. That is a long shot, Juna said. It is the only shot we have, Zachary replied. Will you trust me? Juna looked at him for a long moment, and then she nodded. I trust you. The Crossridge Town Council met once a week in the back room of the Copper Kettle. It was an informal arrangement, more of a gathering of the town's most respected citizens than an official governing body, but their word carried weight in the community. Zachary arrived early the next morning and requested an emergency session. Martha, whose husband was on the council, agreed to spread the word, and by mid-morning, 7 people were seated around a long wooden table, looking at Zachary with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. There was Thomas Garrett, the farmer who had been one of the first to welcome Juna. Martha's husband, Robert, a stocky man with a kind face. Eliza Stone, who ran the general store and had a sharp mind for business. James Whitaker, a former militia captain who now worked as a carpenter. Sarah Bellamy, a midwife who had delivered half the babies in Crossridge. Henry Locke, an elderly man who had been one of the town's founders, and Peter Dalton, whose presence made Zachary's jaw tighten. "Thank you for coming," Zachary said. "I know this is unusual, but I need your help." "What is this about, Nolan?" Henry asked. Martha said it was urgent. Zachary explained the situation, laying out the facts as clearly as he could. The brokerage mistake, Juna's arrival, his decision to keep her, Whitley's demand that she be returned along with the threat of financial penalties. "They are trying to extort me," Zachary said, "and they are treating Juna like property instead of a person. I am asking the council to intervene, to tell the brokerage that Crossridge does not tolerate this kind of behavior." "That is a bold request," Eliza said. "The brokerage operates under territorial law. We are just a frontier town. We do not have the authority to overrule their contracts." "Maybe not," Zachary said, "but we have the authority to decide who is welcome in Crossridge and who is not. We can tell Whitley that if he tries to take Juna by force, he will be banned from the town. We can make it clear that we do not do business with people who treat other people like merchandise." "And what about the penalties?" Robert asked. "If the brokerage decides to pursue legal action, you could lose everything." "I know," Zachary said, "but I am willing to take that risk. What I am not willing to do is let them take Juna. She does not want to go to Stonehill. She wants to stay here, and I want her to stay." "That should be our choice, not the brokerage's." "What does the girl say about all this?" Sarah asked. "Have you asked her what she wants?" "She wants to stay," Zachary said, "but she is afraid that staying will ruin me. She is willing to go to Stonehill to protect me, even though it is the last thing she wants." "That is noble of her," Sarah said, "but it does not change the legal situation." "Perhaps it does," James said. He leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "The territorial magistrate upholds contracts, yes, but he also upholds basic human rights, and trafficking in people, forcing them to go where they do not want to go, that is illegal. If we can prove that the brokerage is engaged in trafficking, that changes everything." "How do we prove that?" Zachary asked. "We get statements," James said. "From Juna, from you, from anyone else who has dealt with the brokerage. We document the coercion, the threats, the way they are treating her like property, and then we take it to the magistrate ourselves, beat them at their own game." "That could work," Eliza said slowly, "but it would take time, and it would require Juna to testify. Is she willing to do that?" "I will ask her," Zachary said, "but I think she would be. She is braver than anyone I have ever met." "There is another problem," Dalton said. He had been silent until now, but his voice cut through the room like a blade. "If you refuse to honor the contract, Nolan, it sets a dangerous precedent. What is to stop anyone else in Crossridge from breaking their agreements? Contracts are the foundation of commerce. Without them, we have chaos." "This is not about breaking contracts," Zachary said, glaring at him. "This is about exposing fraud. The brokerage made a mistake, and now they are trying to profit from it by threatening me with penalties I should not have to pay. That is not honest commerce. That is extortion. Is it? Dalton leaned back in his chair. Or is it simply the enforcement of terms that you agreed to when you signed the contract? Did you not agree to a 7-day reporting period? Did you not agree to the penalty clauses? I agreed to receive a bride, Zachary said, not to be robbed by fine print. The law does not care about your feelings, Nolan. It cares about what is written in the contract. Enough, Henry said, his voice sharp. This is not a courtroom, Dalton. We are here to help one of our own, not to argue legal technicalities. Zachary has been a good member of this community for years. He works hard, he deals fairly, and he does not cause trouble. If he says the brokerage is in the wrong, I am inclined to believe him. As am I, Thomas said. I have met Juna. She is a decent person, and she does not deserve to be sent off to some stranger who treats her like a plow horse. If Zachary wants to keep her, we should support him. I agree, Sarah said. A woman should have a say in where she goes and who she marries. If the brokerage is not allowing that, then they are in the wrong, contract or no contract. Then we are in agreement. Robert looked around the table. We support Zachary and Juna, and we tell the brokerage to back off. I still think this is a mistake, Dalton said. But if the rest of you are determined to interfere in a legal contract dispute, I will not stand in your way. Just do not come crying to me when it all falls apart. Noted, Robert said dryly. He turned to Zachary. We will draft a letter to the brokerage and the magistrate outlining our position. James will help with the legal language. In the meantime, you keep Juna safe. If Whitley tries anything, you come to us immediately. We will deal with him. Thank you, Zachary said, the words thick in his throat. Thank you all. He left the meeting feeling lighter than he had in days, and when he returned to the smithy and told Juna what had happened, she cried. They were tears of relief and gratitude and disbelief, and he held her while she wept, stroking her hair and murmuring reassurances. They are going to help us, she said, her voice muffled against his chest. They barely know me, and they are going to help us. They know enough, Zachary said, and they are good people. This is what Crossridge is. This is what you are staying for if you still want to. I want to, Juna said. She pulled back and looked up at him, her eyes red but her smile radiant. I want to stay with you. I want to build a life here. I want all of it. Then you will have it, Zachary said. I promise. Whitley returned at noon as he had said he would. But this time, he was not alone. With him was a tall, severe-looking woman with graying hair and sharp eyes. She introduced herself as Constance Reed, the owner of the Westmark marriage brokerage. Mr. Nolan, she said, her voice clipped and businesslike. Mr. Whitley has informed me of the situation. I have come to resolve this matter personally. There is nothing to resolve, Zachary said. Juna is staying here. That is not acceptable, Constance said. The contracts are clear. Miss Morren was purchased by Mr. Varley, and she must be delivered to him. She was not purchased, Zachary said. She is a person, not a piece of livestock, and she does not want to go to Stonehill. She wants to stay here with me. What she wants is irrelevant, Constance said. She signed a contract agreeing to be matched with a suitable husband. Mr. Varley is that husband. She is obligated to fulfill her part of the agreement. She signed a contract agreeing to be matched, Zachary corrected, not to be sold to the highest bidder. And if your brokerage is in the business of trafficking women against their will, then you are breaking the law, and I will make sure everyone knows it. Constance's eyes narrowed. That is a serious accusation, Mr. Nolan. Do you have proof? I have Juna's testimony, Zachary said. And I have the testimony of the town council, who are willing to swear that your representative threatened me with financial ruin if I did not comply. That is extortion, Mistress Reed, and it is illegal. It is enforcement of a legal contract, Constance said. but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes now, a crack in her confident facade. "Then take it to the magistrate," Zachary said. "We will see what he has to say about your business practices." Constance studied him for a long moment, and then she sighed. "You are making this far more complicated than it needs to be, Mr. Nolan. All I want is to correct an error and ensure that my clients receive what they paid for. Surely we can come to some reasonable arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Zachary asked warily. "You want Miss Morren to stay." "Mr. Varley wants the bride he contracted for. If I can convince Miss Oslin to come here to you, then both problems are solved. You get a bride, Mr. Varley gets Miss Morren, and everyone is satisfied." "I do not want Mara," Zachary said. "I want Juna." "And I am telling you that is not possible," Constance said, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Miss Morren is under contract to Mr. Varley. I cannot simply reassign her to you because you have developed feelings for her. That is not how this works." "Then how does it work?" Zachary demanded. "Do I just pay you whatever you ask and hope that you leave us alone? Is that the game?" "There is no game," Constance said. "There is only the contract, and the contract must be honored." "Even if it means destroying two people's lives?" Zachary asked. "Even if it means sending Juna to a man she does not want and forcing me to accept a woman I have never met." "How is that honoring anything?" Constance opened her mouth to reply, but before she could speak, Juna appeared in the doorway. She had been upstairs out of sight, but she must have been listening. She looked pale but resolute. "I will go," she said. "I will go to Stonehill, but I want something in return." "Juna, no," Zachary started, but she held up a hand. "I want you to void Mara's contract," Juna said, looking directly at Constance. "I want you to release her from the obligation to marry anyone. Let her choose for herself what she wants to do. Let her be free." Constance frowned. That is my condition," Juna said. Her voice was steady, unyielding. "If you want me to go to Stonehill, you release Mara. Otherwise, I will refuse, and you can try to drag me there by force. And I promise you, Mistress Reed, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of brokerage you run. I will tell every woman who walks through your door that you treat us like slaves, that you do not care about our wants or our safety, only about your profits. I will ruin you." The room was silent. Constance stared at Juna, and Zachary saw the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of options and consequences. "You cannot ruin me," Constance said finally. "I have been in this business for 20 years. I have connections, influence. You are just one girl." "Maybe," Juna said. "But I am one girl with nothing left to lose, and that makes me dangerous." Constance's jaw tightened. Then she turned to Whitley. "Show me the contracts, both of them." Whitley produced the papers from his satchel, and Constance studied them in silence. After a long moment she looked up. "There is another option," she said slowly. "The contracts specify that brides are to be matched with suitable husbands. They do not specify which husband. If Mr. Nolan is willing to pay the difference between what he originally contracted for and what Mr. Varley paid, I can reassign Miss Morren to him and send Miss Oslin to Stonehill." "How much is the difference?" Zachary asked. Constance consulted the papers. "Mr. Varley paid 30% less than you did, as he was contracting for a worker rather than a wife. The difference amounts to approximately 40 silver pieces." Zachary's heart sank. 40 silver pieces was a fortune. It would take him months to save that much. "I do not have that kind of money," he said. "Then I am afraid we are at an impasse," Constance said. "Wait." Juna stepped forward. "What if I work off the debt? I could send a portion of my earnings to the brokerage each month until the difference is paid. Zachary would not have to bear the cost alone." "That could work," Constance said, "but it would take years to repay that much, and in the meantime you would still be under contract to the brokerage. Is that really what you want? I want to stay with Zachary, Juna said. If that means working for years to pay off a debt, I will do it. Zachary looked at her, at the determination in her eyes, and he felt something inside him break open. This woman, this incredible woman, was willing to bind herself to years of labor just to stay with him. And he could not let her do it. No, he said, there has to be another way. There is, said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Peter Dalton stood there, his expression unreadable. I will pay the difference, Dalton said. Zachary stared at him. What? You heard me. Dalton stepped into the smithy. I will pay the 40 silver pieces. In exchange, you will owe me a favor to be called in at a time of my choosing. Why would you do that? Zachary asked suspiciously. Because it amuses me, Dalton said. And because I am curious to see how this plays out. Besides, you are a skilled blacksmith, Nolan. Having you in my debt could be useful. I do not trust you, Zachary said bluntly. I do not care if you trust me, Dalton said. I am offering you a solution. Take it or leave it. Zachary looked at Juna and she looked back at him. He could see the same wariness in her eyes, the same distrust of Dalton's motives, but he could also see hope. What kind of favor? Zachary asked. Nothing illegal, Dalton said. Nothing that would harm you or Miss Morren, just a favor. Work, most likely. Perhaps a large commission or some repairs. I have not decided yet. That is too vague, Zachary said. It is the best offer you are going to get, Dalton said. And time is running out. Mistress Reed is a busy woman. She will not wait all day for you to make up your mind. Zachary looked at Constance, who was watching the exchange with an expression of barely concealed impatience. Then he looked at Juna again. What do you think? He asked her quietly. I think it is a risk, Juna said, but I also think it is our only option. Unless you have 40 silver pieces hidden somewhere that I do not know about. I do not, Zachary admitted. Then we take the risk, Juna said. Together. Zachary turned to Dalton. All right, I accept, but I want the terms in writing, exactly what I am agreeing to. Of course. Dalton smiled, a thin, satisfied expression. I am a businessman, Nolan. I always put things in writing. The paperwork took the rest of the afternoon. Dalton produced the silver, counted out in front of Constance and Whitley. Constance, in turn, drafted a new contract, reassigning Juna to Zachary and releasing Mara from her obligation to marry him. Zachary signed the new contract, and Juna signed it, and Dalton signed a separate agreement outlining the terms of the favor Zachary now owed him. When it was done, Constance and Whitley packed up their papers and left, promising to send word to Stonehill that the matter had been resolved. Dalton lingered for a moment, his eyes gleaming. Congratulations, Nolan, he said. You have your bride. I hope she is worth the price. She is, Zachary said. Thank you, I think. Do not thank me yet, Dalton said. Wait until I call in my favor. Then you can decide whether you are grateful or not. He left, and Zachary and Juna were finally alone. They stood in the middle of the smithy looking at each other, and then Juna started to laugh. It was a wild, slightly hysterical sound, and Zachary could not help but join in. We did it, Juna said between gasps. We actually did it. We did, Zachary said. You are mine now, officially. Legally. And you are mine, Juna said. She crossed the space between them and threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Zachary Nolan. I know it is too soon, and I know I should wait, but I do not care. I love you. I love you too, Zachary said, and the words felt like the truest thing he had ever spoken. He kissed her then, a deep, hungry kiss that made the world fall away. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands tangling in his hair, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. We should get married, Juna said, properly, with witnesses and vows and everything. Yes, Zachary said. Yes, we should. They were married 3 weeks later at the autumn fair that Crossridge held every year to celebrate the harvest. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, which was held in the field behind the copper kettle, under a canopy of trees that burned gold and crimson in the afternoon sun. Martha had sewn Juna a dress, a simple but beautiful gown of cream-colored linen with green embroidery that matched her skin. Zachary wore his best shirt and trousers, cleaned and pressed, and he felt like the luckiest man alive as he stood beside Juna and spoke the vows that would bind them together. "I promise to choose you," he said, his voice steady, "every day for the rest of my life. To honor you, to protect you, to love you. You are not the wrong bride, Juna. You are the only bride, the only woman I want." Juna's eyes shimmered with tears. "I promise to choose you too," she said. "To stand beside you, to work with you, to build a life with you. You saw me when no one else did. You gave me a home when I had none. I will love you forever, Zachary Nolan." The traveling priest, a kind old man who made the circuit through the frontier towns, pronounced them husband and wife, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Zachary kissed Juna again, and the world felt bright and full of possibility. The feast that followed was generous and joyful. Tables had been set up in the field, laden with roasted meat and fresh bread and pies made from the season's last berries. There was music, a fiddler and a drummer who played lively tunes that set people dancing. Zachary and Juna danced together, stumbling and laughing, and when they grew tired, they sat on the grass and watched the others. "This is everything I never dared to hope for," Juna said, leaning against Zachary's shoulder. "A home, a husband, friends. I keep waiting to wake up and find out it was all a dream." "It is real," Zachary said. "You are real, we are real, and we are going to have a good life together, Juna." "I promise you that." "I know," she said. She turned her head and kissed his jaw. "I believe you." As the sun set and the stars began to emerge, Zachary thought about the strange path that had brought them to this moment. A brokerage mistake, a wrong bride. A series of choices that should not have worked, but somehow did. He thought about his brother, about the valley he had left behind, about the woman who had chosen Garrett over him all those years ago. And he felt nothing but gratitude that things had turned out the way they had. Because if they had not, he would never have met Juna, he would never have known this joy. "What are you thinking about?" Juna asked. "How glad I am that the brokerage made a mistake," Zachary said. "How glad I am that you ended up here instead of Stonehill. How glad I am that you are mine." "I am glad too," Juna said. "For all of it, even the scary parts, because they led me to you." They sat together under the stars, surrounded by the warmth of their community, and Zachary knew that he had finally found what he had been searching for his entire life. Not just a wife, but a partner. Not just a home, but a place where he belonged. And not just acceptance, but love. The months that followed were busy and full. Zachary's forge prospered, and Juna proved to be an invaluable partner in the business. She took over the bookkeeping, organizing his accounts with a precision that made him realize how much money he had been losing to disorganization and poor record keeping. She also began to take on small commissions of her own, mending tools and sharpening blades, and the townspeople quickly came to appreciate her skill and efficiency. Dalton did not call in his favor immediately, and Zachary began to wonder if he ever would, but he did not forget the debt. It hung over him like a shadow, a reminder that nothing in life came without a price. Winter came, and with it, the first snowfall. Zachary and Juna spent the long evenings by the forge fire, talking and reading and simply enjoying each other's company. Juna taught him the orc songs her mother had sung to her as a child, and he taught her the human ballads he had learned growing up. They were a strange mix, those songs, but they blended together into something new and beautiful, just like their lives. In the spring, Juna discovered she was pregnant. She told Zachary one evening as they sat on the steps of the smithy, watching the stars emerge in the twilight sky. "I am going to have a baby," she said, her voice quiet and wondering. "Our baby." Zachary felt his heart swell with a joy so intense it was almost painful. "Are you sure?" Sarah confirmed it this afternoon, Juna said. "She said I am about 2 months along. The baby will come in late autumn." "A baby," Zachary said. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "We are going to be parents. Are you happy?" Juna asked. "I am the happiest man in the world," Zachary said. "Are you?" "I am terrified," Juna admitted. "But I am happy too. I think our child will be beautiful, strong and smart and brave just like you." "Just like both of us," Zachary corrected. "They will have your cleverness and my stubbornness, and they will be unstoppable." Juna laughed, and the sound was like music. "I hope so. I hope they will have a better life than either of us did. A life where they are wanted and loved and never have to doubt their worth." "They will," Zachary promised. "I will make sure of it." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and as Juna's belly grew, so did the anticipation in Crossridge. The townspeople were excited to welcome the first child born to the blacksmith and his orc wife, and they showered Juna with gifts and advice. Martha knitted tiny blankets and booties. Eliza provided a steady supply of ginger tea to ease Juna's morning sickness. Sarah visited regularly to check on both mother and baby, and she assured them that everything was progressing normally. In early autumn, as the leaves began to turn and the air grew crisp, Dalton finally came to collect his favor. He arrived at the smithy on a gray afternoon, his expression serious. Zachary was working on a commission, a set of decorative hinges for a wealthy landowner, and he looked up as Dalton entered. "I need to talk to you," Dalton said without preamble. "In private." Zachary set down his hammer and led Dalton to the back of the smithy, away from where Juna was sitting and sorting nails into bins. "What is this about?" Zachary asked. "I am calling in my favor," Dalton said. "I need you to make something for me. Something specific and something that must remain confidential." "What kind of something?" Zachary asked warily. Dalton reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Zachary, who opened it and studied the sketch inside. It was a design for a lock, intricate and complex, with multiple tumblers and a hidden release mechanism. "This is a masterwork," Zachary said slowly. "It would take weeks to complete, maybe months." "I know," Dalton said, "but I need it done, and I need it done well. This lock must be unpickable, unbreakable, and completely secure." "What is it for?" Zachary asked. "That is none of your concern," Dalton said. "All you need to know is that I am willing to pay you for your time and materials in addition to the favor you owe me. This is not charity. This is work." Zachary looked at the design again. It was beautiful in its way, a challenge worthy of his skills, but there was something about Dalton's secrecy that made him uneasy. "I will do it," he said finally. "On one condition. Whatever this lock is for, it cannot be used to hurt anyone. If I find out you are using my work to cause harm, I will make sure everyone in Crossridge knows what kind of man you are." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "You have my word. This lock is for protection, not harm. It will keep something valuable safe. That is all." "All right," Zachary said. "I will start on it next week." "Thank you," Dalton said. He turned to leave, then paused. "Congratulations on the baby, by the way. I hear it is due soon." "In a few weeks," Zachary said. "I hope it goes well," Dalton said, and for a moment Zachary thought he might actually mean it. After Dalton left, Zachary returned to Juna and told her about the commission. She listened carefully, her hands resting on her swollen belly. "You trust him?" she asked. No, Zachary said honestly. But I owe him, and a debt is a debt. I will make the lock, and then we will be free of him. I hope so, Juna said. I do not like the way he looks at us, like we are pieces on a game board. He can look all he wants, Zachary said, as long as he does not try to move us. The baby came on a cool evening in late October, just as the first frost touched the ground. Juna's labor was long and difficult, and Zachary spent hours pacing outside the room while Sarah and Martha worked inside. When he finally heard the thin, wailing cry of a newborn, he felt his knees go weak with relief. Sarah emerged, wiping her hands on a cloth, and smiled at him. "You have a daughter," she said. "A beautiful, healthy daughter, and Juna is doing well. She is tired, but she is strong." Zachary did not wait to hear more. He rushed into the room and found Juna lying on the bed, pale and exhausted but smiling. In her arms was a tiny, wrinkled baby with a dusting of dark hair and skin that was a lighter shade of green than Juna's. "Look," Juna said, her voice hoarse. "Look at what we made." Zachary knelt beside the bed and looked down at his daughter. She was perfect. Small and fragile and utterly perfect. Her eyes were closed and her tiny fists were clenched, and he felt a love so fierce it took his breath away. "She is beautiful," he whispered, "just like her mother." "What should we name her?" Juna asked. Zachary thought for a moment. They had discussed names over the past few months, but nothing had felt quite right. Now, looking at his daughter, he knew. "Petra," he said. "Her name is Petra." "Petra," Juna repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Petra Nolan, welcome to the world, little one." Petra opened her eyes then, and Zachary saw that they were golden, just like her mother's. She looked at him, and he looked back, and he made a silent promise to her. That she would always be wanted, that she would always be loved, that she would never have to doubt her worth. The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, but Zachary had never been happier. He worked during the day, forging metal and fulfilling commissions, and he spent his evenings with Juna and Petra, marveling at the tiny miracle they had created. Petra was a good baby, fussy only when she was hungry or tired, and she seemed to recognize her parents' voices already. Zachary finished Dalton's lock in late November, working late into the night to complete the intricate mechanism. When it was done, it was a work of art, the tumblers fitting together with perfect precision. He delivered it to Dalton personally, along with a set of keys. "This is excellent work," Dalton said, examining the lock with an appraising eye. "Better than I had hoped. You have a true gift, Nolan." "Thank you," Zachary said. "And now we are even. The favor is paid." "Indeed it is," Dalton said. He handed Zachary a pouch of coins. "For your time and materials, you earned it." Zachary took the pouch, relieved to have the debt finally settled. He returned to the smithy and gave the coins to Juna, who counted them carefully and added them to their savings. "We are doing well," she said, her expression pleased. "Better than I ever thought we would. We have enough to get through the winter comfortably, with some left over for emergencies." "You are a miracle worker with numbers," Zachary said, kissing her cheek. "I would be lost without you." "And I would be lost without you," Juna said. She looked over at the cradle where Petra slept, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. "We have built something good here, Zachary." "Something real." "We have," Zachary agreed, "and it is only going to get better." The years that followed were full and rich. Petra grew from a baby into a bright, curious toddler with her mother's intelligence and her father's determination. She loved to sit in the smithy and watch Zachary work, her golden eyes wide with fascination as he shaped metal into tools and art. Juna continued to manage the business side of the forge, and her skill with numbers became so well known that other townspeople began to ask for her help with their own accounts. Crossridge prospered, and so did the Nolan family. They added a small extension to the smithy, creating a proper living space with a kitchen and a sitting room and a bedroom for Petra. Zachary built furniture with his own hands, sturdy chairs and tables, and a bed for his daughter that he carved with images of stars and flowers. When Petra was 3, Juna became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier and the birth was quick. They welcomed a son whom they named Finian, and Petra was delighted to have a little brother to dote on. Finian was different from Petra. Where she was thoughtful and observant, he was loud and energetic, always moving, always exploring. He kept Juna and Zachary on their toes, but he also filled their home with laughter. 2 children, Zachary said one evening as he sat by the fire with Juna, watching Petra teach Finian how to stack blocks. I never thought I would have this, a family. A real family. Neither did I, Juna said. She leaned against his shoulder, her hand resting on his. But here we are. And I would not change a single thing. Not even the mistake, Zachary asked, smiling. Not even being the wrong bride, especially not that, Juna said. She turned to look at him, her golden eyes warm. Because if I had not been the wrong bride, I would never have found the right husband. And that would have been the greatest tragedy of all. Zachary kissed her, slow and tender, and he thought about how far they had come. From a brokerage mistake to a life filled with love and purpose. From loneliness to belonging. From being the wrong choice to being exactly right for each other. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees and the forge glowed softly in the darkness. Inside, the Nolan family was together, safe and warm and happy. And that, Zachary thought, was all that mattered. As the children grew, so did their family's reputation in Crossridge. Zachary's work as a blacksmith became sought after not just in their town, but in the surrounding settlements as well. Travelers would come from miles away to commission pieces from him, and his name became synonymous with quality and craftsmanship. Juna's skill with accounting led her to start helping other families and businesses manage their finances, and she became an invaluable resource to the community. Petra and Finian thrived. Petra inherited her mother's love of numbers and her father's creative spirit, often sketching designs for tools and decorations that Zachary would then bring to life in the forge. Finian, despite his boundless energy, showed an early aptitude for working with his hands, and by the time he was 5, he was already helping Zachary with simple tasks around the smithy. One spring afternoon, when Petra was 8 and Finian was 5, a messenger arrived in Crossridge with news from Westmark. The Westmark marriage brokerage had been shut down by the territorial magistrate following an investigation into their business practices. Constance Reed and Marcus Whitley had been arrested on charges of fraud and human trafficking, and all contracts issued by the brokerage had been voided. Zachary and Juna read the news together, sitting at their kitchen table while the children played outside. "It is over," Juna said softly. "Really over, we do not have to worry about them anymore." "We never had to worry," Zachary said. "The moment you became my wife, you were safe, but I am glad they are facing justice. They hurt a lot of people." "I wonder what happened to Mara," Juna said, "and the other women." "I hope they found happiness," Zachary said, "wherever they ended up." As if in answer to their thoughts, a letter arrived 2 weeks later. It was from Mara, who had heard about the brokerage closure and wanted to reach out. She wrote that she had ended up in Stonehill after all, but not as a bride. Instead, she had opened a small seamstress shop and was making a good living creating clothing and quilts. She thanked Zachary for his role in freeing her from the contract and wished him and Juna well. "She sounds happy," Juna said after reading the letter aloud. "I am glad." "So am I," Zachary said. "Everything worked out the way it was supposed to." That summer, the town council asked Zachary to forge a new bell for the chapel, a large project that would take months to complete. He accepted, and the entire family became involved in the effort. Petra helped design the decorative elements, Finian assisted with the smaller components, and Juna managed the logistics and finances. When the bell was finally finished and hung in the chapel tower, the whole town gathered for the dedication. The sound of the bell ringing out across Crossridge was clear and beautiful, a symbol of community and continuity. Zachary stood with his family, Juna's hand in his, Petra and Finian pressed close against their sides, and he felt a profound sense of gratitude. "This is what we built," he said to Juna. "Not just the bell, but all of it, the life, the family, the home. We built it together." "We did," Juna said. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "And I would not trade it for anything." The years continued to pass, bringing their share of challenges and triumphs. There were hard winters and bountiful harvests, illnesses and recoveries, losses and celebrations. Through it all, Zachary and Juna stood together, their love deepening with each passing season. Petra grew into a young woman of remarkable intelligence and creativity, eventually apprenticing with a master craftsman in a nearby city to learn advanced metalworking techniques. Finian became his father's full partner in the forge, his energy and enthusiasm perfectly complementing Zachary's patient precision. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Zachary and Juna stood in the field behind the copper kettle, the same place where they had been married 2 decades earlier. The town had organized a celebration in their honor, and the field was filled with friends and neighbors, all come to toast the couple who had become such an integral part of Crossridge. 20 years, Juna said, looking around at the gathering. "It feels like a lifetime and like yesterday all at once." "I know what you mean," Zachary said. He took her hand, running his thumb over the calluses that matched his own. "But I would live every moment of it again, exactly as it happened. Even the scary parts?" Juna asked. "Especially the scary parts," Zachary said, "because they taught us what we were capable of. They showed us that we were stronger together than we ever could have been apart." Juna smiled, and in her golden eyes, Zachary saw the same fierce determination and gentle love that had captured his heart all those years ago. "You know," she said, "I used to think being the wrong bride was the worst thing that could have happened to me, but now I understand. I was never the wrong bride. I was exactly the right bride. I just had to find the right groom." "And I found the right wife," Zachary said, "even if it took a mistake to bring us together." They kissed, surrounded by the cheers and applause of their community, and Zachary knew that his life had turned out better than anything he could have imagined. He was no longer the second choice, the one who was not quite good enough. He was a husband, a father, a craftsman, a respected member of his community. He was loved and valued, not because someone had been obligated to choose him, but because he had built a life worth choosing. As the sun set and the celebration continued into the evening, Zachary and Juna danced together under the same canopy of trees where they had spoken their vows. Their children danced nearby, Petra graceful and Finian enthusiastic, and the whole scene was filled with such joy and warmth that Zachary felt his heart might burst. "Thank you," he whispered to Juna as they swayed to the music, "for staying, for choosing me, for building this life with me." "Thank you for seeing me," Juna whispered back, "for believing I was worth keeping even when I was the wrong bride." "You were never the wrong bride," Zachary said again. "You were always exactly right. And I will spend the rest of my life being grateful that you ended up here, with me, in this little forge in this little town. Because this is where we both belong." Juna rested her head against his chest, And they continued to dance as the stars emerged overhead, the same stars that had witnessed the beginning of their story and would continue to watch over them for all the years to come. In the forge, the fire still burned, a constant warmth that mirrored the love that had grown between a blacksmith and the bride who was never meant to be his, but who had become the center of his world nonetheless. Their story had started with a mistake, but it had become something beautiful and true, a testament to the power of choice and courage, and the unexpected grace that can come from life's detours. And as Zachary held Juna close, surrounded by everything they had built together, he knew that he would not change a single moment of their journey. Because every step, every challenge, every fear, and every triumph had led them to this perfect place, where they were exactly where they were meant to be together.